Thank you everyone for your cooperation. We're now back in our meeting here, public meeting. Councillor Hoekstra.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. Has this motion been made yet?
I do not believe that it has.
I would like to move that council approve the board appointments and reappointments as presented with the remaining vacancies to be advertised.
Thank you very much. No additional input. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you.
Can I ask one last favor of council to make a motion on the council dates, just for clarity for administration? We didn't pass the motion made, so it would be the alternative motion that it would be nice to make. I'll just pull it up here. That's implied, but there was no real motion, so.
We rejected option 2, but we did not endorse option 1.
Exactly, thank you.
Very good. That helps make it clear. If someone would care to make that motion. Councillor Hoekstra.
So moved. Or is it right up there? Oh, that council approved the regular.
That's the alternative down here.
That council approved the regular and committee council meeting dates from November 2019 to October 2020 as presented in option 1.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. All those in favor? Any opposed? So noted. Thank you. It is 5:27. That concludes our organizational meeting. Make it official. If someone cares to do a call for adjournment, please. Councillor Hibbs.
So moved.
So moved. Thank you. All those in favor? Very good. We're a few minutes behind the scheduled time, but 5:28, I will call the regular council meeting for October 28th to order. And once again, you've got an agenda before you. Any adjustments we need to make there? If not, Councillor Hoekstra.
I move that we accept the agenda as presented.
Very good. All those in favor as circulated? Unanimous. Thank you. And our minutes from October 15th, earlier in the month, we had an opportunity to review those. Any corrections or questions? Now would be the time to bring them forward. Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. The only thing I noticed actually was under new business, that first motion, the 2020 operational budget, just a minor spelling error. It says moved by Councillor Connick, and then it has an N thrown on the end there for good measure. So. But with that slight correction, I would move that we accept the minutes as, I suppose, amended technically.
Thank you. No additional? Very good. All those in favor? Thank you. We move down the list here to number 4, council mailbox under information, and all neatly laid out in order here, without going through them at length individually. The Lacombe Foundation minutes from June 24th, any input on that? Councillor Connick?
It talks about house donation, update on sale. I see they're doing all kinds of good stuff there. Can you just give us a brief, are you able to update us on that, Councillor?
Go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. So it was sold to a private citizen, and they are, that all the work that's going on there is by the new owner of that building.
Councillor Hibbs, did you have a question, or did you like this one? No problem. No worries. Lacombe Foundation minutes from September 3rd. Any questions with them? We also had submitted board talk from Parkland Regional Library. Next is the Lacombe Regional Waste Services Commission minutes. Is there any questions or concerns with that? I guess, working off memory here, I don't know that I went through the executive committee, reviewed the manager who was on his initial probationary period and has since been offered and accepted his position full-time as manager of the commission, Mr. Jay Hahn, so it's a positive move in our opinion. So we'll move on to the Lacombe Police Commission minutes from September 19th. How about the September 23rd letter to the mayor for the removal of a public telephone? I thought that was an interesting letter to receive because there's so few public telephones left in the world. It was an interesting one to receive. No questions there? They're all good. There was one citizen letter here from October 11th regarding dog licensing fees, and there has been others, I believe, since, or one other for sure. Director Pichet, did you have any comment on this letter you'd like her to make, or not necessarily?
No, not really.
Okay.
It, just abide by if council has any changes that they'd like to make.
Right, if memory serves me correctly, I think that both of these individuals had an issue with an elderly pet, and they didn't feel that it was fair to have to purchase a multi-year license as we have now, and I don't know. We did discuss this at the time, and I guess it's from my perspective, I know the system is not perfect, but I don't know how on earth we would go about administering a change for that is beyond me at this time, but maybe we will, after people view us discussing it, they'll have some creative input. Was there any other comments on that item? And then the October 11th letter from AUMA for the North Red Deer River Wastewater Services Commission project of the year. I believe that was from the Public Works.
The Alberta Public Works Association, or the American Public Works
American Public
Association,
Works.
Chapter.
Very good. I believe that our CAO and Mayor Poole and Councillor Wigmore were all on hand for that award ceremony.
Sewer.
I was away, I believe, but I was not able to make it, but certainly nice to be recognized for that project. That's been quite a number of awards now, so I think it speaks highly to those involved with it. If there's no additional comments, we could receive these council mailbox items for information. If someone would care to move. Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I will move that we accept those as the information, please.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Unanimous. Okay, Director Juke, next up under Section 7 here, bylaws, we've got Bylaw 370.2, our procedural bylaw, for consideration for some amendments and first reading.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Before council tonight is a proposed new council agenda template with an accompanying procedural bylaw amending bylaw and a sample consolidated procedural bylaw in the event that council sees merit in the new format. Now, the format varies from the approved format in the procedural bylaw, so hence the amending bylaw, and I'll just detail that in a moment. In addition to the new proposed format, changes to the bylaw include removing the requirement for rescheduled meetings to be placed on only the next Tuesday, and correction of a number of errors and omissions in the current bylaw. And notwithstanding the recent recent resolution that passed in the organizational meeting, I think administration would still support removing this particular provision in the amending bylaw, by the amending bylaw, because you can still pass your preferred rescheduling date at your organizational meetings by resolution. You don't need to have it in the bylaw, and if you ever want to change it, you'd have to do it under a bylaw amendment, so it might be a good idea to do this anyway at this time. So just getting to the agenda now, and as you can see from the sample that's included, it's kind of a mock agenda that's been included in this package, in addition to the amending bylaw itself and a consolidated procedural bylaw, in case the bylaw does get first and second reading. At any rate, the agenda has a number of changes, so I'll just itemize them. The existing 13 categories of items have been collapsed into 10, and this is done by collapsing bylaws, unfinished business, and new business into an action-oriented category called requests for decision. Collapsing council mailbox, administrative reports, and committee reports and minutes, and council reports into one category called information. This will allow council to consider administrative reports without presentation if it's appropriate, and to get it to dedicate more or less time to any one item to need to discuss it. Other changes include presenter column is now called representative, allowing for appointee names to be associated with, for example, committee, board, and commission items to remind the public who's actually appointed on those boards and committees. And in addition, what you'll see here is a lot more detail in the sense that there's a subcategory numbering system in each of the categories now, which allows each item to have a separate distinct reference tag, allowing council to refer to an item easily and accurately. And also for the legislative coordinator to assign a new number to a new item if it's added, to renumber items as well. The consolidated bylaw that's attached to this package has each change highlighted in it. And I did also want to just highlight the service level impacts, which is an increased service level delivered to council and to the public by potentially increasing efficiency at meetings. For example, when administrative reports that are presented for information can be accepted as information without presentation and debate if appropriate. The reorder, so the additional reference numbers for each item, and that each item itself is now structured in layman's terms with increased information in each line in descending order of importance from left to right. It just potentially can increase public engagement with the agenda. And I'd be happy to take any questions if you have any.
Thanks, Director Duke. Councillor Hicks, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I do like the proposal. I guess my only suggestion that I would like to see is under the request for decision, I think that I would like to see the subcategories like you see in information where you have administrative reports and council mailbox. I'd like to see where it says perhaps bylaws grouped together and then have like, I guess that would be 5.2A, 5.2B, that sort of thing. And whatever the other one was, only because bylaws, I mean, those are 3 readings, they're a little bit different. I like those being differentiated in the agenda currently, and so I'd like to see that somewhat continued. Does that make sense? And then the other requests for decision typically are kind of a one motion deal, so I'd like to see the differentiation there, but that's all.
So I was just curious, with the adoption of minutes towards the end of the agenda, does that have the potential to be confusing or whatnot if we've got ongoing issues or whatever, if we're dealing with them prior to and then trying to adopt the minutes before? I'm just wondering what the impacts of that will be.
Thank you. It is quite unusual. I can't say that I've seen it in other agenda templates, but when you think about it, usually there's only minor amendments to your minutes and they don't usually impact other items on your agenda, not that I've seen so far. And this puts this kind of sort of housekeeping step at the end of the meeting where it's so moving other things up front, for example, presentations, so the public isn't waiting. It seems it's more of a hierarchy and just it's a little lower on the hierarchy in terms of importance to the public, potentially.
Fair enough. Councillor Connick.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. I do like in the bylaw 370.2, 2.3, it says Councillors' reports shall be in written format. No provides on the precise form of the legislative coordinator. Order than noon on Wednesday preceding the meeting day. I think we're doing too many oral reports. Like, I don't have one tonight, so I'm not giving an oral report. I'll have a written one. Next meeting, I think we need to get away from the oral reports because they're not, you know, they're not as clear, they're not as concise, they're not very public either. So I'm glad to see that that's in here.
Anything additional? Director Duke?
Just one other thing I wanted to make sure everyone was clear that in the amending bylaw, section 2, amending section 6.44 bylaw 370, the dates and the deadlines for things have not changed. It's just that section 6.44 incorrectly referred to other sections of the bylaw. So that's just literally a correction in that respect. Section numbers.
Looks like some pretty intense thinking going on here. Do we have a motion in our future?
You represent the West.
Councillor Hoekstra?
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Mayor Creasy. I move that council gives first reading to bylaw 370.2, the procedural bylaw amendment as presented.
No additional lights on, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? Very good. Anybody care to do a second reading? We'll wait and do that later, but it's up to you. Councillor Hibbs?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. It's not a very controversial thing, I think, so I think we can go ahead then and move that council give second reading to bylaw 370.2, the procedural bylaw amendment as presented.
Thank you. Anyone else? All those in favor? Any opposed? It's unanimous as well. We'll move down the sheet here under new business to our corporate services for routine disclosure policy. Director Piché, you want to take us through that item?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So this evening for council tonight is policy 18/211.01 2019 PO routine disclosure. This policy is being proposed to replace the current proactive disclosure policy. What routine disclosure generally is the act of giving or providing information to the public without, that may be of interest to the public or to outsiders, without requiring an actual FOIP request. What this does is provides information through routine disclosure. It promotes transparency. We already do that in some of our areas, specifically our planning and development area does provide statistics. We even do it within our council when we get requests for information from councillors or from citizens. We do post things online for that reason, so it is more transparent. Staff find this that when they already provide this information regularly, it helps ensure that as an organization, the city will continue to do so as it's allowed through the legislation of the FOIP Act. And if there are any questions at this time, I'm happy to answer them.
Councillor Hibbs?
I'm not anticipating a lot of conversation on this, but feel free to weigh in. But I would go ahead then and move that council approve policy 18/211.10 2019 PO routine disclosure.
0.01.
What did I say? Oh, sorry, 0.01.
Appreciate you correcting that for the record. Any additional discussion or comments? All those in favor? And I didn't see everyone's over here, so I'll ask any opposed. I expect there would be, but just in case. Very good. Unanimous.
Thank you.
And then as well, Director Piche, you've got some information for recording of council meetings for us.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Yeah, before council tonight is, again, is policy. It's number 11/016.01, 2019 PO, recording of council meetings. This is purely a housekeeping item. We've been doing this now for approximately 2 years, since the beginning of 2018 when we first put this in place. Previously, back in 1991, there was a motion by a council to allow for audio recordings of council meetings. However, since I've been here since 1998, I have never actually seen that in place. So we've had technology try to follow along with recordings of councils, but it hasn't really been practiced as much as we've done so now. And I have to say that not only is it beneficial to the public, but I know that staff have found this very helpful and very useful when it comes to reviewing council meetings to ensure that we can get complete responses back to council when it's requested. And this does actually align with our strategic plan as well. This was one of our very first strategic items that we put in place as per your plan. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them at this point. Thank you.
Councillor Hoekstra?
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. Under policy statement number 1, it just says, at the end of there, it says these recordings are transitory records and no permanent record of the recordings shall be kept by the city of Lacombe. This is with the understanding that everything's sort of out there on the web though, right?
That is absolutely
It's
correct.
just that there's nothing here at the city.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, all of our recordings are housed on YouTube. And so we're at the mercy of YouTube's policies for that, which is why we say it's transitory.
So and that's just a simple disclosure for liability reasons?
Exactly.
Okay.
If there is something that we ever pull back, we will house that in-house. Like if there is a recording that we require for reference or for future use that is mandatory, if it becomes down to a legal hold or something like that, we will hold that in place.
Thank you. Councillor Jacobson?
Sure, so just for clarity, this is just putting into policy what we're doing already?
That is absolutely correct.
So then I'll make the motion that council approve policy 11/016.01, 2019 PO recording of council meeting.
Thank you. Anything additional from anyone? All those in favor? Any opposed? Unanimous, thank you. And next up, I'll ask that Planner Kirchner join us. And she's got some demographics for us as far as age of individuals within the city of Lacombe, I believe. So look forward to see what you have to say. And the floor is yours.
Well, thank you for having me. This is the first of 3 little presentations on demographics that you'll have over the next coming council meetings, just to give you a bit of idea of what information is out there in the federal census, particularly if anyone's taken the time to look through the long form census results. There's a lot of really great information there. A little dry, but very, very useful. So this first one will just focus more on the age demographics of the community. So we do have in front of you just a basic chart that highlights the population growth we've had since 1986. So our population has increased fairly evenly since then. This does not include the city census that we just did. I guess is a forewarning, so it's not 100% accurate, just federal information. So we have increased from 2006 to 2016 in a 10-year period by about 2,300 people. And that is from 10,740 people to 13,057 people. So we have had, I think, fairly steady population growth. We did have a bit of a boom between 2001 and 2006 with a 14.5% increase. And then from 2006 to 2011 and 2011 to 2016, we've been steady at an 8.9% growth rate. When you look at growth rate, there is different types of growth to take into account. So as our populations change, it's impacted by the death rate of residents. So that is typically a loss to your population. It's usually offset in some fashion by birth rates and migration, which typically bring positive growth to communities. Although communities can lose residents to out-migration as well. So during years with more robust economies, such as 2001 to 2006, population growth would have been heightened due to increased number of migrants, both from within Canada and new Canadians who've chosen to relocate to areas with substantial job opportunities. If we continue to see a very similar population growth rate, by 2036, Lacombe could have a population that ranges anywhere from just over 17,661 to upwards of 27,000. So a pretty diverse range depending on if you get more cycles of boom for population, if there's changes to growth rate. So demographics obviously is something that can help decision makers understand what your population is, what its size is, and the behaviors, and help mark decisions based on what the needs would be for those different population groups. Everything from age, language, education, and gender can play a role. So for instance, a community that has a very small population of school-aged children, but a very large population of seniors may choose to invest in a senior center versus a youth center, just based on population numbers alone. So Lacombe, we've broken our population down into 3 age categories based on the federal census. The first group is 0 to 19, which basically represents children and youth for the most part. The second group, age 20 to 64, represents for the most part the community's workforce. And then 65 years and over represents the community senior population. So within this chart, you can see the different population percentages for these age groups in the 2006, 2011, and 2016 year. We have had a slight decrease in the number or the percentage of youth in the community, so from approximately 30% down to 27.5%. Not a huge decrease, and then of course you counter it with the fact that the population's increasing anyway. So it's just not growing as quickly, that age group isn't as growing as quickly as it would have before. For our workforce age group, we have gone from 55% and have increased to 56.8%. So we are seeing a larger proportion of our community being made up of that workforce aged group. So that could be families have been relocating here, or single individuals as well, which can account for that change. And then of course the senior population has had a slight increase as well, from about 14.7% of our population to 15.75%. So that gives you a bit of a breakdown, sort of seeing how we fall with these different age groups. We have a larger proportion of our population is youth compared to seniors, which I think is probably a bit surprising. Just think, with the way our population is growing nationally, there is an emphasis on that aging population, but we do have a very good and strong amount of young people in the community. And that's, I think, really important to keep in mind, because that group, if they choose to stay, will help enhance our working age population. We do have just an interesting chart to compare us to some of our neighboring and surrounding areas. So the blue line shows the 2016 percentage of your population that's youth.
Sorry to interrupt. Before we get too far ahead, though, Councillor Hoopster did have a question on the previous slide, but I was getting too far behind here. So.
Thank you, yeah, sorry to, but I just was, do you have a further breakdown of 0 to 19?
Unfortunately, they don't break it down very well.
Okay.
Or in age groups that would be more useful, based on elementary school age or high school. So unfortunately, there is some limitations with how the federal census functions with the age demographics.
So does our census break that down better? It doesn't, does it?
No. So that would be something to consider if the city was undertaking a longer form style census. You could really ask questions to figure out young childhood, elementary school and high school, and give you basically an idea of how that population will shift over the years and what the need might be for school-age programs or schools as well.
Or schools, yes, that's what I was thinking. Because our neighboring community has a population of 10,000, but they have, of that 10,000, 1,000 is 0 to 5-year-olds.
Yeah.
But somehow they got that stat, so I was just curious what it was for us.
Yeah, it's the census is tricky, and also to keep in mind for a few years we got rid of the long form census, so there is some information gaps that can make it difficult to kind of track those patterns as they move forward. But I can take a look and see if that information might be out there someplace.
We have some data for 2014, but again, it's 5 years old.
Director Thompson, did you have some input as well?
Yeah, just very quickly, the federal census does break down the ages 0 to 4, 5 to 9, 10 to 14, so we can certainly follow up with Lacombe's numbers on the specific age demographic that you're interested in, and that's 0 to 5, 0 to 4.
I was just curious of all the breakdown, because it would affect schools, right? And where it's potentially moving, but if it's from 2014 or
16.
Or 16, some of them, well, you still can see it in terms of schools.
Okay, so the newest chart, as I was saying, the blue represents the proportion of your population that is represented by the 0 to 19. And then the orange represents the 10-year change, so that would be that decrease that you're seeing or increase in that proportion of youth for your population. Lacombe is kind of middle of the road. We did have a slight 2% decrease, which is fairly common, as you can see. The only community that actually had an increase in the percentage of youth was Black Falls. And it was a very, very small increase. Looks like maybe 2% or 1% at the most. But it's pretty standard across the board from communities that are more rural to the city of Red Deer that you're seeing that change in demographic, and that would be in part by the increase in seniors as well, offsetting those numbers. So just good to keep in mind that change is happening. And then the next chart actually tracks the opposite, so seniors. And as you can see, it's very different than the youth one. There is, across the board, each population for each community is seeing an increase in that percentage of seniors that make up their community. Lacombe actually has one of the smallest changes. We're pretty much even with Camrose and Wetaskiwin for our increase, whereas some communities are seeing a pretty drastic change, like the community of Beaumont. The number of seniors just skyrocketed. So that keeps you in mind, that we're having, changes in our population, but it's not to the extreme that some communities are definitely seeing. We do have a couple pie charts as well, just to show how we compare to the province as a whole and to the national. So we are, Alberta and Lacombe are younger populations than what the national average is. We have a larger percentage of youth than the national, as well as a lower percentage of seniors. So nationally, Canada provides that average, but 17% of all Canadians are 65 or older. And we're at 16, so we're not too far off, but we do have that increased percentage of youth at 27% compared to 22. So that's at least a good way to see what policies the federal government might be putting into place. Our numbers are not horribly off what the senior percentage is, so it's something that could be useful as we move forward. I do have a lovely little population pyramid that really highlights those age demographics as we're moving through. I have placed in there the different generational names, although some sections don't actually have names. But you can see the Canadian amount is the solid bars, and the Lacombe amounts is that dark blue line. Our millennial population is pretty much the same as the baby boomer population. So that's something to keep in mind, that age group of 1982 to 2001 born individuals is about the same as the 46 to 65 age group. So as you can imagine, just pretend this was a moving graphic. These bars will just keep moving up the chain as they age. So we'll continue to have that gap of baby boomers that will represent more seniors than we've seen traditionally, as well that millennial age group will continue to move up as well. So we have the baby boomers, and then after the baby busters, which was a huge decrease in the number of babies that were born in that period. So that'll be something to keep in mind, is we'll max out at the baby boomers as a senior population, and then we will see a kind of a sharp decrease in that percentage as well. So just in future trends, things to look forward to as our community changes, the baby boomers, of course, will play a very key role in the next 5 years. So as of 2016, the baby boomers were aged 51 to 70. So this generation will continue to age, and it will shift the demographics of our country, resulting eventually in more seniors than children and youth. By the year 2031, all of the baby boomers will have hit retirement age, so 65, and those aged 65 and older will account for approximately 23% of the national population. So that is definitely something to look at. Currently, we are sitting better in Lacombe than the national, but we can expect to see that age group and that amount of people in that age group increase once we kind of hit that 2031 year. Canada is struggling with low fertility rates. So as of 2001, each Canadian woman was having 1.61 children. So basically, we are not having enough babies to replace the parents of the babies. So we're entering a kind of an interesting period. Baby boomers are retiring. We're not having enough babies to replace them in the job market. And as we continue to see the fertility rates fall, which they have been, we'll be relying more and more on new Canadians to fill those roles and those gaps. So we do have the statistics since early 1990s. Canada's averaged 235,000 immigrants annually. And Alberta has become one of the destination spots for these individuals. So we can anticipate to see these amounts increase. For instance, in 2020, they anticipate 340,000 new Canadians will arrive, and some of them will settle in Alberta through the provincial nominee program that lets all provinces kind of earmark which skills they need to replace the retirement population for their workforce. So we will see some of those shifts in Lacombe, and we'll be taking kind of a closer look on that cultural immigration statistic in a future report, just to kind of outline what our population is actually created from, what nationalities are represented, and languages, and those kind of interesting diversity that we don't necessarily think about on a daily basis. So that's about very high-level report on demographics. So I don't know if there's any questions.
Thank you very much for that interesting report. So then the next one was origins and whatnot, and the third report will be on what?
I think origins, and then the third one is on economics, and they might be reversed, I can't remember offhand, but those are the other two topics, so that'll give you an idea of if there's any groups in our community that haven't typically been reached by our traditional means of communication, and then if there are more vulnerable groups that from an economic standpoint would benefit from some of the programs that are already in place. So it gives kind of an idea of if there are need gaps, it's stuff that you guys can think about.
Very good, we appreciate the input. Councillor Gibbs?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Just to add to the sort of request for further information, we talked about kind of a breakdown of that age group, but I'd also like to know what sort of the median age is as well. It seems to me that I remember reading that it was 39 in this community, but I could be mistaken, which I was, at the time I was looking that up, I was just curious how we compared to Blackfalds, for example. I believe they were almost a full decade younger than us, for example. So I just would be, if you're looking at those numbers anyways, if you can find that as well, that would be fantastic.
For sure, I can add those as a side note on the next presentation. Just as I don't know if you guys have any questions on that one. There will be a third opportunity to see if there's any information. So you said Blackfalds in particular as a comparison. Any other key communities?
I don't even necessarily need the comparison, although that would be certainly interesting. But I certainly would like to know what ours is, and then maybe maybe an Alberta average, just like you did already before, but just to see kind of what our community compares to sort of an average. Yeah.
Excellent. I can definitely do that.
Councillor Hoekstra?
I'll move that council accept this report as information, but I do have a comment. I never knew I was a baby boomer. Is that a new definition? Or I or someone else in the room?
I've known about that term since high school because they explained it that everyone came back from the war and they were really excited to see everyone.
Right.
And then they just had a lot of babies.
Yeah, I totally understand baby boomers, but it was never, it was...
the years were never
it was
defined.
Never, no, well, not
to that extent.
Include the 60s.
Yeah, so they
just to reveal.
The Statistics Canada really put a lot of thought into how to define those age groups. And then of course that poor little gap between the baby busters and the millennials that don't actually have a name. They couldn't settle on one. I know, but they used that term.
Generation X.
They threw a few different ones around and they didn't come to a consensus on it, so. But yeah, now you can show everyone and you can tell them what generation they're a part of.
It was a very nice try, Councillor Hoekstra, but you're a boomer.
You're in now.
I did make the motion.
Yeah, I was going to say, thank you for the motion as well. All those in favor? Opposed, no. Thank you. Jennifer? I was trying to cleverly get out of doing reports because I didn't print mine off, even though it wasn't listed, but I think we can live with what I have for tonight. Councillor Connick, since I know you have yours printed and ready to go, you care to start?
Councillor Forrest? Not at this time.
We're 2 for 2 now. Councillor Hibbs?
I will submit a written one.
Thank you. Councillor Jacobson?
I was enjoying giving mine verbally. I didn't want to call it a reasonable offense, so I'll submit a written one next time.
So much for the East Wing. We'll leave that to the end. Then Councillor Gullekson?
I do not have a written report tonight.
Councillor Ross?
I'm consistent with the others.
So, just the 6 of us so far. Councillor Connick, I appreciate your comments earlier.
That's good.
I actually did, you did do one. It was just today though, in all honesty, but I did do one, and didn't print anything out anyway. Councillor Huster, we're looking towards you to.
Well, I was actually thinking, when was the motion on the floor that we weren't supposed to be writing one out every time? Because I'm feeling like I was a bit of an oddball, but obviously I got the prize, didn't I?
Absolutely.
Got the prize? What is it? But I got to reformat mine because the title is incorrect. Anyhow, this captures a few of the things I did. A great fundraising kickoff dinner with the Schizophrenia Society. Overheard many comments about how people love the LMC. The Lacombe Regional Emergency Management Advisory Committee met last week, and we have hired Julian Buger as our new coordinator, and things are really moving along. It's quite exciting to see how each of the municipalities are brought back on board as to what their understanding of this agreement is. There's a rotation. It's interesting, when you're not at the meeting, you apparently don't get appointed to become the chair. But that's what happened last meeting, but I wasn't at the meeting that I was appointed chair. But anyhow, I am still chair for another year or two. It was supposed to be every 2 years that the chairing of this committee would move to different communities, but it is staying with Lacombe for a while. The Chamber Gala was on Saturday night. That was also a really great event. It's quite neat to see all the different businesses that are in Lacombe, and that we can celebrate their presence and celebrate the people who work at those businesses, but then also our incredible community members were highlighted that night, our volunteers. So that was excellent. I went to the first hockey game yesterday. Councillor Hibbs was there too. That's not on here. I was hoping there were going to be some ceremony about thanking Lacombe that the Eckville Eagles, that's what they actually were Generals jerseys. Were you surprised by that?
They wore the jersey, but I don't think they have officially finalized the name.
Yeah, that's what I was.
There's some things going on there.
Yeah, so anyhow, I went to that hockey game, and it's kind of fun to watch a few of the neighborhood boys on the team. And here we had a budget workshop today.
Thank you so much for your written report. Just to clarify, as far as hockey goes, yes, I was there for the official jersey kickover, and I was the only one that showed up because it had been canceled. So I had a great meeting with the team manager and whatnot that was there, and that will be forthcoming when the league sees fit to authorize that changeover. There's a reason for that. And the other items there, thanks for all of the participation, both in the schizophrenia provincial kickoff. I don't think many people realize it. I think that the head office for the Schizophrenia Society of Alberta is in fact just centrally located in Red Deer, and the other locations in the two major cities in Grand Prairie, Medicine Hat, I think there possibly some more, maybe Grand Prairie, are all satellite offices of the Red Deer ones. I really not many people realize that, because I had several ask why in fact we held the provincial one. And they're close by, and I've had a very good experience here too. And I too had a lot of positive comments about our facility there at the LMC, and people from all over the province certainly enjoy coming there to make use of it. Anybody have anything additional for reports? If not, if we could have a motion, and probably for the only person. Well, there is one more. Our Chief Administrative Officer would like to make his report.
I feel like that is actually a report from October 15th. Is that the right one?
It says the 15th on the card.
Yes, that is not the current report. So I will combine that report that was to go here with the report that I submit next meeting. I apologize for that. We did have one done, it just wasn't one out.
I'm not sure you did. Well, we'll look forward to that, and I will have mine too. Given that
Go past 9 o'clock next time.
Councillor Hoekstra, I think it would be appropriate that you move the reports for information, seeing as how you're the only one that had one.
Whoops. I move that we accept the report as information.
As we all hang our heads in shame, all those in favor? Thank you. And item number 11, notices of motion. We have one from Councillor Gullekson. Would you care to read it, please?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. This is my notice of motion to direct administration to prepare a report to committee outlining possible inter-community public transit options, including an expanded use of Connex for the city of Lacombe.
Thank you. Let's see, an awful lot of lights here. Any-
There's no discussion.
Can I have a question?
No discussion, but Councillor Ross?
I'd just like a definition of the notice of motion of inter-community. Is that like intermunicipal?
Intra is within the community itself, so this would be just moving around the city of Lacombe.
Okay, sorry.
I'm trying to confuse us, the difference between intra and inter, right? Inter is between communities, intra within. Yeah.
Inter-community is the same thing?
Inter-municipal is between two municipalities.
Okay.
Intra-community is within the elements thereof.
So, just so everyone is aware here and at home, that particular notice of motion will be up for discussion at our November 12th meeting. At regular meeting of council. Okay? Thank you. And unless I have overlooked any items on the agenda, I believe that all we have left is in camera. We can certainly do our, it'll still be appropriate to do next meetings at this time. November 4th, we've got a council committee meeting. Everyone aware of that? And then on the 18th and 25th of November, we have regular council meetings.
But I believe we just did the 12th, I think.
Those are Mondays, and we didn't do that option.
This is only proposed, so it'll be according to your last motion today.
Aha.
So November 12th, not
Oh,
November.
they really relied on the recommendation. That's messed this up. I was just exactly. So then if you could just bring it up, but now that we've done it, we better make sure that it's correct, otherwise we're really gonna mess things
It's
up.
November 12th.
Thank you. So the council committee meeting on November 4th is still correct?
Yep.
The regular meeting will be scheduled for Tuesday, November the 12th, and then the subsequent regular meeting will still be on the 25th of November. Okay, 4th, 12th, and 25th. We stand corrected. We have the in-camera next, so if I could have a motion. Moved by Councillor Connick that we go in camera at 6:19. Traditionally, we allow time to speak with the press. Is there any items that you would care to?
I have everything I need, appreciate it.
Very good. Ms. Barrett, how are you? Good, you? Nothing else you need?
No.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you both. Very good, so get a motion by Councillor Connick. All those in favor? You're now in camera. Thank you. Camera's still on.